right, we are back for another episode of Lot Talk powered by Lotpop. I'm Chris Keene, one of your co-hosts here. I got my good friends here with me, John Anderson, Ronaldo Leonard. Just a little bit about us. We are just a bunch of guys that get to talk to dealers each and every single week, find a lot of really cool stuff that's going on in our industry. We find a lot of the good, we find a lot of the bad, and really the whole nature of this is we wanted to take all of these great insights that we're finding each and every single week, and we wanted to bring some life to it. We wanted to bring it to all of our brothers and sisters out there in the automotive industry to maybe give you just one more nugget to go from good to great and to go from great to excellent. And more importantly, we want to take the suck out of the automotive industry by purely just working the facts. The WTF is something that we found as a really fun acronym to use that does have the Urban Dictionary meaning. We all know what that means. But in our world, over at Lotpop, we use all of the factual information from dealerships' data to help them take those facts and really apply them into their business. So that way they can make a lot more educated decisions based upon how their store in their market with their people are really and truly making adjustments in a real-time basis right now versus something that might have happened 45 or 60 days ago. Now, speaking of like 45 and 60 days ago, we may even have to go a little farther back, John, with you. A lot farther than 45 or 60 days ago. And John Anderson, who is our Executive Vice President, Chief Experience Officer, and I think he's probably got that role as Experience Officer because you are probably the most seasoned individual that we have working for us here at Lotpop. And when I say seasoned, I'm not talking about just all your years of experience. I'm talking about even just your chronological experience that you have. Yes, John, that is the nicest way I could put it to say you are the oldest person on our team. The oldest.
I mean, get to the point, Chris.
The point is this, okay? The topic of our podcast this week is the blind leading the blind. Okay. Now, as I think back, and we all started talking this last week about the blind leading the blind, it was really around the topic of the way that we used to do follow-up. And if you guys remember, there was something that we had like a tickler file. Now, I'm going to share for some of our viewers what that tickler file looked like. And that tickler file, that thing was a lot of fun. Now, John, this might have been the most advanced form of follow-up, especially for back in your day, because, I mean, John, why don't you tell us what follow-up was like back when you were selling the Model Ts?
Oh, brother, you're wearing me out this morning already. Yeah.
That's the goal.
Hey, listen, that brings back a lot of good memories and a lot of painful memories, right? Because yeah, we didn't have all the tools back then that we have now. So it was basically hand to card, and once you gathered that information off your tickler file, it was hand to phone and pick up the phone and start making phone calls, right? It's funny because we were just trained that way, man. We grabbed the phone, right? Now the phone has evolved into a tool that we very rarely use it to talk live to somebody. We text or we get on platforms. How many times have I been in a restaurant and seen a bunch of young people sitting at a booth and they're all on their phones? I know they're talking to one another and they're sitting right across the booth from one another, right? So conversation has become a lost art. And I think, that's back in my day. Yeah. Right. When they were first building Model Ts, man, we only had one way to get a hold of people. And that was, put them down on a card, write them down, and you had a tickler file, and you went through that, and you did it in order, and you reached out to those customers, man. When November came around, you had a whole set of customers, and you started reaching out to those customers. It was personalized, right? And I think we've gotten too far away from that personalization, and I think it is affecting our industry overall right now.
So John, I gotta ask one more time though. Was it a party line or was it a rotary phone when you first started out?
Oh, dude, hey, listen, I used to have the long cord. I used to have the long cord on my phone, man, so I could walk around. Because you had that short cord, you couldn't get too far away from the phone, man. So you had to have that long cord. And sometimes, depending on where you called, smaller towns, it was a party line, man. You'd hear somebody else on there. So that might be, hey, listen, every now and then you picked up another customer that way, right? Because they heard you talking to somebody else.
Oh,
So, but in all seriousness, do you remember when the evolution of the cordless phone came along? And if you was a salesman and you had like a really good cordless phone, you could like still catch phone pops from the lot while still trying to take it up. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, you had that.
oh, yeah.
You had that 40-pound bag phone you're carrying around, man. That thing could be an anchor out there, right? You could that was a dual purpose phone. You could catch it up from the lot, and you could also mount one of those cell flags off of it because it wouldn't blow over if you mounted it to that phone pack.
So, John, I mean, the tickler file was great, and I'm glad that you shared some time from back in your Model T days and your party lines and everything else. But Ronaldo and I were having another conversation. Here, I'm going to throw it back into maybe the next century past when you were selling, John. Y'all remember this one? Ronaldo had a lot of fond memories of this guy here.
Oh yeah, the daily game plan, man. That was a game changer for me. I loved it. Because for the first time,
don't you still use one?
Say again?
I said, don't you still use one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tried and true. Why you got to reinvent the wheel? Quit moving my cheese. But the thing about it that I loved is that I was able to track my progress toward my monthly goal. They had a little section on the, I think it was on the back part of the, we'd get a new planner every month. And then you could sit there and plot it out on exactly how you're progressing towards your goal. And, you had your prospects you wanted to touch out today, had other folks that, if you had time, you'd get to. And it was, I see it as the lot walk or lot list, as it's becoming very soon, before the lot walk. And some of the other digital versions of CRMs that we have out there that's allowing you to track your progress and making sure that you get your goals. What's the line that we love to use is that what we focus on seems to expand. And that was the first instance for me, at least as a salesperson, to be able to focus on what my end goal was and kind of gauge my activity towards that end. Yeah, loved it. The daily game plan.
The daily game plan, the tickler file, Stuker. I mean, that guy had a lot of cool stuff. John, we talk about those phone ups. And I don't know about y'all, but I was the king of pranks inside the dealership. I'll never forget. I used to take it. Remember the old bat phone looking thing that had the buttons? This is John after the rotaries. Okay. But the bat phone and then the plug underneath it and it plugged into the little outlet in the wall, for the phone line. I used to get the dealership every morning when I was still selling. And I used to go into everybody's phones and lift them up and slightly unplug them. So that way when Miss Margie called for a phone pop, she would say, sales call line 1. I'd just take my time walking over to the phone because remember it used to be a mad dash, the first one to the phone, or you had that old veteran that we'd never taken up. He would just sit there and wait for the phone to ring, and he'd take every single of the phone pops. I fixed all their wagon wheels one day. I went in and undid everybody's phones at the bottom. They'd pick them up. Nothing was happening. I take my time, walk over, was able to take all the phone pops. Yeah, that didn't go over well. That was mad.
Yeah, you were the guy that I always put the bearing grease on his phone after you did that, man. So when you lift it up, you got the bearing grease on your ear, man. Yeah, you were that guy.
Oh, I was that guy, and I had plenty of bearing grease in my day. It's probably why I'm hard to hear it now. It's all that bearing grease.
What'd you say?
What?
Hilarious. Hilarious.
Oh yeah,
those are good times.
I will say that was fun. That was fun, wasn't it, Naldo?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one of the other things we used to do is we used to inadvertently or accidentally take somebody's card box that they had the file in, the tickler files, and just turn it upside down, get it all disorganized. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anybody so mad.
I can't tell you how many times somebody did that to me, man. That was the most frustrating thing in the world because I'm definitely I definitely have a bad case of having everything neat and tight and yeah, man, they used to do that stuff to me all the time, man. You guys remember the old I don't know, I wonder if dealers have that still. You remember the old bullpens in dealerships where they'd stick all the salespeople in one little room, man, and you're all sitting side by side. Yeah. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, man, but I remember being in several of those bullpens, man. And that's where a lot of that stuff like Chris is referring to would go on, man, because you had guys right next to you and you could unplug their phones. And yeah, man, that was it was a lot of fun back then, right? But it seems like we had a lot of fun, and these tools that you're bringing up really helped us stay organized and get our jobs done. It seems like we've drifted away from that as the business has evolved. I don't know if it's so much we've drifted away from it, but we've talked about this the three of us before. We used to have there used to be inconsistencies year over year, right? And really since 2010 up until this year, right, the business has been really good, and it's been consistently in an upward trend, right? And I think that lends to relaxing on some of those things that back in the day we didn't have the ability to relax on, right? And people do most of their shopping nowadays online. Back in my day when they were buying Model Ts, man, they had to drive dealership to dealership or ride their horse in and tie their horse up to the post so we could convert them from that horse to that Model T.
The little horse trading.
John was the inventor of horse trading.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, he was
you got old brutal,
man. Oh yeah, we super brutal, but it's all in good humor and good fun. But I would tell you though, and again, I wish they could do stuff like this still, but there's this stuff called HR and feelings and things of that nature. But I'll never forget the biggest AR I ever had. I mean, the biggest AR I've ever had is when the whole unplugging of the phone didn't work anymore. I actually went in to everybody's phone and super glued their headset to the actual phone. So that when to pick up the phone, they picked up the whole damn. When they went to pick up the headset, they picked up the whole damn phone. Man, I got so much trouble on the deal. I think I was AR'd like $1,400 or something like that. And it was for them old nasty cream-colored push-button phones. Man, I think now that I think about that, I think they overcharged me. I think they really overcharged me.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how they were going to cover the expense of the new phones that they had been planning on putting in place about 6 months prior to.
They figured it out. I paid for those phones. I paid for the new ones.
Put it on key. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, but I did. I super glued all the headsets down. It was awful. It was awful.
You did everybody a favor.
John, I did. I got everybody new phones. All the axle grease and everything was taken out of them. So it was good. So I guess there was some. See, I gave back. I was giving back. That's what that was. But,
I'd always
you
just
know,
take
hey.
saran wrap and put it over the speaking part of the phone. So on the other end, they're
Sir,
like,
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. What do you mean you can't hear me? Wah, 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 wah. Boy. Good
That
times,
was too
man.
much fun.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Well,
John, you did talk about it. You talked about it, you know, and Ronaldo, you touched it a little bit. You know, we've evolved and we've gone from the tickler files, the daily game planners, to the CRM. And then, of course, you know, now, you know, our president, founder, CEO, he sits in his hot tub and he comes up with all kinds of crazy ass ideas, you know, as we affectionately called it, the hot tub time machine. And he came out with Lotpop and finding a way to be able to marry that activity, you know, from the inventory management tool and from the CRM and bringing all that together to make us even more efficient than the good old tickler file, or make us more efficient than, you know, this daily game planner. And, you know, Ronaldo and I had this conversation about, you know, one of our newer dealer partners the other day. And when we were talking about, you know, that statistic that 70 to 80% of the activity that dealers do, or excuse me, salespeople do, that have nothing to do with like buying a car that's in inventory. I mean, that right there, that really started like screaming at me. And if you think back, John and Ronaldo, to those tickler files, we weren't here. We weren't at the 70 to 80% because we were literally calling people that either A, you knew you had a car to sell them, or B, the car that you were trying to sell them was still sitting right outside your office and you're staring at it every day, calling Bob and Betty, you know, texting or emailing or whatever that we could do, sending letters out, everything. We didn't have this problem back then. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think we did we?
No, it was no. Yeah, it was, Chris. It was more of a, you know, listen, people. We didn't have the internet back then, right? So people pretty much stayed in their communities and transacted with local dealers, right? As the internet come about, that brought, it shrunk everything, right? So now you can look at, as a consumer, you can get online and you can look at, you know, a state over, right? What's the data that the average customer sends out 12 to 15 leads when they start their journey, right? That wasn't the case back then, right? They just drove into the dealership, right? So they stayed relatively local. So, you know, back then you did follow up, but it wasn't as a huge necessity as it is now. That's what that tickler file was about, right? You go back in and you'd reach out to those customers that you'd sold, but on a daily basis, I mean, you're consistently reaching out to customers that have either visited or called in. You've got an opportunity to sell them a car, and so that's where your focus was at. And so, you know, now you've got CRMs that have tasks, and most of those tasks really have a lot, really don't have a lot of things to do with um, of consistently working on customers that are truly in the market for a car. So there's just a lot of stack in those task schedules, and we do that because that's what we've always done. But I think times are calling for a different method now, and that's where that's one of the things we work with dealers on is right understanding we've got to reach out to customers that are on inventory that we have for sale first and foremost, so we have an opportunity to sell that inventory. And that, you know, to your point, Chris, that used to be all we did. We were working on customers that are looking to buy a car, and that's where we stuck. That's what we stuck to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that the tickler file did for us is it was just It was simplicity. You've got your list of folks that you have visited with that's in a lead, and you are constantly staying on them until they buy or die. And I know it's not proper English, but when I first started, it was like, hey, call them till they buy or die. Call them till they buy or die. And you just worked that card file until they went away. If you had somebody to add, you'd add them in. Or if you came across somebody, hey, I'm not getting anywhere with this guy. And that 5x7 note card went to file 13. But you kept on rolling. And you were laser focused on your opportunities.
100%.
But
yeah, I think you did the same thing too when it evolved here, because Ronaldo, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's been a cool minute since I've worked the daily game plan. But you literally, as you call, text, emailed, or I'm so used to saying call, text, emailed. Back then we did text, okay, until the cool alpha pagers came out,
right.
But that's for a whole nother. We should do that. We have one episode. We should have one episode. We're gonna have to go to flea markets and pawn shops and everything, and we should really find all of the cool nostalgic things that we use to better ourselves in this business, like the alpha pager. Anyways, I digressed. This game planner, though, I mean, that was kind of the next evolution, Ronaldo, wasn't it? Past the tickler file.
Oh,
Did you move things?
Absolutely, because it gave you an overall view of what you were trying to accomplish and what you were going to have to do in order to be able to get there. You had the roadmap with the end in sight, which allowed you to kind of coordinate your daily activity with what you were trying to accomplish. But you had that list of leads right there in front of you, and you were, like I said, focused like a laser beam on those opportunities to achieve your goal. And so to me, I thought that took follow-up of the lead process and lead management to the next level. And you always have these little bits of technology that will take you to the next level. And then eventually, what we saw was with the invention of the internet and then instituting lead management on the internet, we kind of started down that tipping point where all the dominoes started to fall. And here we are today, where a salesperson can come into the dealership and have access to every possible lead that dealership has ever received. and it's just, it's mind boggling because there's so much information there. But the end result is that you get to the point where you're doing less with more information. And so getting back to that, the simplicity of being laser focused on your group of leads and tracking how you are actively engaging them to get to, your goal at the end of the month. If it's 20 units, it's 20 units. If it's 35, it's 35. But your activity is structured in such a way that you're not spending the majority of the time that you are using on that activity towards people who are not going to reap you the benefits that you're looking for yourself and for the dealership. So I have that conversation when I'm training dealers all the time, is that, we really want our salespeople laser focused on their opportunities so that they are dialed in and they don't get distracted by all the other noise that's out there. Because let's face it, you mentioned a moment ago, prospects are going to reach out to 7 or 8 different dealerships. And a lot of it is smoke, but that engagement and that having that opportunity to truly engage and connect with a prospect, that's where you're going to, put the majority of your time, effort, and energy moving forward. And so, yes, the daily game plan, that was my introduction to having that overall picture and view so that I had a target that I could focus on and concentrate on. But take my low-hanging fruit and keep it in front of me at all times. Until we worked it out to the end of the month.
I'd be really interested to know of our viewers, of our listeners. I mean, definitely drop it in the comment below. I'd be curious if there's anybody that uses anything similar in 2024 besides the CRM. Are you using anything like the daily game plan or like a tickler file. So comment that below, because I'd be really curious to see if there's anybody out there that is still just using the good old pen and paper to make sure that they are staying on top of whatever the CRM says, plus what they know is their hot customers that they should be chasing down. Because to your point, and this dealer that you're in the midst of training right now, a brand new Chevy store that's on with us. And John, I took a screenshot of this because we sent it to the dealer. And right before, today's episode, I thought about it. I was like, oh my God, I've got the screenshot. I've got to share this. This is exactly to what we've been talking about of how we're not leveraging some of the old school that we know to do, because we've replaced that. When you think about the early 2000s, when some of those first bit of CRMs came around, when those came around, those CRMs said, hey, we're going to make your job easier. You're never going to lose sight on a customer anymore. You're not going to not follow up with customers anymore. We're going to make it so much easier. We're going to put a task schedule in front of you. Well, wasn't that what this did or this did? But it put that low-hanging fruit in front of us because we knew Bob and Betty was looking for an F-150 or was looking for, a Fred Flintstone ride for back in, John's day. We knew they were looking for that item, and we would just sit there and pull those every single day going, yep, I got one in. Here it is right here. This is the Barney Rubble Mobile. We'll go put them in the Barney ride. Let's go. So, but we had that. But now you fast forward to where we're at today, in this 70 to 80% of the activities that these guys are doing on cars that aren't even in stock anymore. But then we get these CRMs, if you will, having us call, text, email this customer on a vehicle that sold out of the inventory 9 days ago, and we don't have nothing else to sell them. But yet, if I remember, Ronaldo, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this dealer had somewhere north of 60% of their dealer or of their customers that were still on cars in stock that they haven't called, texted, and emailed in 2 days.
Right.
But yet this guy, they called, text, emailed the day before, and they don't have nothing to sell them. And the car they were going to sell them sold 9 days ago. I mean, how does that work out, John? You're the elder here. How the hell does that work out in today's time?
Well, Chris, I think you bring a good point up, showing that, and I'm glad you zoomed in on it because it was hard to see, and I want to make sure that, for those of you that are watching this podcast can see that. But, I know you brought up CRMs a couple times, and CRMs do a good job. I think it's the processes that we've developed over time as dealers within our CRM, right? We develop processes to have our team working those customers. And so, those processes are based on what's happening in the CRM, right? And so in the CRM, you've got most of those customers are ranked by age of customer, right? So, if a customer doesn't buy a vehicle and they get to be 20 days old in our CRM, our process probably changes. And then once they get to be 40 days old, again, our process probably changes. So, we probably have processes on a 40 or 50-day-old customer that says, hey, it'll fire a task out to call that customer maybe once a month. And our point is, what if that 40 or 50-day-old customer is on a 55-day-old vehicle, right? You don't want to call that customer once a month. You want to call that customer every day, every other day, because you've got an age unit, right? So I think it's not so much the CRM, it's the processes that the dealer sets up to trigger those tasks. And quite frankly, that's what we're trying to change is, those tasks are important, but some of those tasks aren't as important as the customer that we know that we have on a vehicle that we can sell today. That should be A++ priority. And I think what you just showed is, you got a customer that the vehicle they sent a lead on has been sold, and we, as of that time, that we didn't have a switch unit. So we always ask each other, I'd be interested to see what the conversation was like, right? You're calling a customer, you don't have a vehicle to talk to them about. What's that conversation? And yet, as you mentioned, right, we're not calling the customers that are on vehicles we have in stock. Those customers are not getting regular calls. And so changing those processes is what we're trying to help our dealers understand, right? It's not so much about the CRM, it's about the processes that were created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ronaldo, you probably see it more than John and I do, but all the new dealers that we get the privilege to start a relationship with here at Lotpop, you get to see the absorbent amount of leads that they have and the absorbent amount of active leads on cars in stock that they're not calling on. My question is, on average, how many leads, because you talked about it a second ago, how many leads are you seeing come in to these dealerships in the last 60 days? How many leads are you seeing coming in? Because we already know that 60, 70, heck, in some cases, 80% of them, they're not getting called, text, email in the last 2 days. The salespeople are following an antiquated, process or task schedule through the CRM. But how many leads on average you think that our dealers are seeing that are coming into us?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, of course, every dealership is going to be different depending on their market size and their effectiveness with merchandising. But we have seen, just as, historically numbers have shown us that, we just came out of a political election. And historically, I think the last 2 or 3 elections that we saw, beginning of September, moving into the election, our shopper counts and leads were headed down. And then after the election was completed, we'd see that number rise again. But on average, I mean, you're looking at, let's just say, our average dealer that's going to have inventory between 150 and 200 units. They're going to see anywhere from 5 to 6, maybe 700 leads come in each month. But the processes that John just spoke about are going to make the difference on being able to capitalize on that number of leads. It doesn't matter how many leads you have coming in. If you're not handling them and meeting those leads or those prospects where they want to be met, then all the hard work that we put into managing the inventory and managing our investment or our dollars for advertising and merchandising, if that is the weak link in our chain, getting to those leads in a quick manner, but also in such a way that's going to lead to that prospect engaging with the dealership and engaging with a salesperson, then, I mean, we go to that WTF, what is going on? But the key to those processes is just making sure that from the initial contact that a lead sends in, we're following up with engaging content, video walkarounds or a phone call just to introduce a salesperson to a prospect, as opposed to, the old processes that are proving themselves ineffective, where we're sending out just immediate electronic emails that are pre-written, don't answer a prospect's question if they submitted a lead with a question. But those processes have to be tweaked in such a way that we maximize the number of leads that we're seeing, whether there's an overabundance or they're scarce, or lead activities picking up. We have to drill down into those processes and make sure that we're meeting those customers where they want to be met and providing them with the information that they're looking for in order to make a well-informed decision. But that way of tap dancing around your question, I don't have a specific number for dealerships and what they're seeing.
You did take the longest way around the barn and still didn't give you a number. That's okay.
Absolutely, okay,
you actually had kind of really brought up, along the lines of, what this week's, topic is about, blind leading the blind. But you also brought up a very, very, very good point. The election's over. And John, we don't have data that goes back to the FDR days, but we do have some data that goes back a ways. John, you're never going to live this down. I mean, this is why you peepaw, okay? This is why you are peepaw. So, but, I mean, so John, help us understand this in all seriousness, because you have been in the business for what, nearing 40 years now?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
All right. We're getting close to 40 years. But because you are, and respectfully, sort of the seasoned veteran on this call, as one of our co-hosts here, I mean, talk about that for a minute. The election's over with, and we know what we see, but let our viewers, let our listeners know what they should be expecting, because all this is leading back to the blind leading the blind when it comes to sales management and customer follow-up and things of that nature. But talk to us about that. Like, here's 2019, obviously pre-COVID, pre-election. Talk to us about that, of what we should expect for shopper engagement, shopper count, things of that nature.
Well, yeah, I mean, we watch this quite a bit as a company. I mean, our eyes are on this consistently, and we do talk about it consistently with our dealer partners, because, technically you could take that back to 2004, I believe, is when they started tracking this data. Yeah, there you go. And listen, it crunches it down quite a bit. So, but you can see consistent trending, right? And overall, look at how it's trending down, right? But this is Google Trends, and it's just showing you used car searches is what it's doing. Basically, people are getting online, they're typing in used cars, they're searching, and you can see a trend down and a trend up. And I can tell you, and it's been, again, go back to 2004, you see a similar thing. You start to see that trend up at the end of November, first part of December. Now, last year, that trend up of shoppers coming into the market happened a little bit later in the cycle. I think it was, where we at? November. Yeah. When did that start to tip up? Right there. So it's not given an exact date, but if I remember correctly, last year it was in the middle of December before you really started to see it tip up. Yeah, pull it in and see what that looks like. Yeah, look at that. Go back to the left just a little bit where it started. There you go, right there. Yeah, middle of December. I thought I remembered that. Typically, the end of November, first part of December, you start to see customers come into the market and start searching, right? Because Christmas brings customers into the market. They're looking for a lot of stuff. Tax time's right around the corner. They typically have some expendable money, so they start looking at inventory, right? And so they'll come in and they'll stay in the market up until the end of March, typically, and then you get a little bit of a dip, and then you get a pickup in July and August. Typically, you get a little pickup. Now that's a little bit earlier last year. You got that little bump right there, but typically you'll see it trend up towards July and August when you have summer selling season and new car manufacturers are trying to rid their stale inventory on the grounds, and then it tips back down until November, December, and then it picks back up. So you typically have about 5 months where shopper counts are on the uptrend. And so this is not to be negative. We share this with dealers, and I think sometimes dealers, I've seen in some of our chat rooms, dealers feel like we're being a little bit negative, saying shopper counts are dropping. It's not a negative connotation. It's just fact. Shoppers come into market, they go out of the market. And so if we just have a set it and forget it platform in our dealership to where we're not adjusting for those times, right? Then we get that, and you guys have seen it, you get that up and down, right? We sell some cars and then it drops off. We sell some cars and then it drops off, because we have to be cognizant. It would be no different, right? We always say this. We always say this. Look, what you're doing on your bricks and mortar lot, your physical lot, you'd want to do on your virtual lot, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I know I've got a bunch of customers on my bricks and mortar lot, we're at high attention, right? We're taking care of those customers. We're on it, right? And we're making adjustments accordingly. Vice versa. If we haven't had activity on the lot in 2 or 3 days, right? As a general manager or a used car manager or a new car manager, what are some of the things I'm doing to try to break that, right? What am I doing? I might be adjusting prices. I might be picking up the phone myself and calling our customers, right? Because I've got to generate traffic at my store. I do that on my bricks and mortar. We have to do the same thing on our virtual lot, right? When we see that starting to dip, right? I've got to change my game plan in order to accommodate for that, what's happening in the marketplace. And that's all that's about. And this is a great chart to kind of track that, is just what's going on with my customers, right? And what's happening with them right now. Are they in the market? Are they out of the market, right? And if you listen, guys, I was going to say this earlier when you were talking, if we believe the data, and I don't have any reason not to believe it, right? If I believe that every customer is sending out 12 to 15 leads when they go to buy a vehicle, when we see that downward trend in customers, how much more important is it for my team to be on Johnny on the spot in reaching out to that customer and providing a level of service that is better than my competitors, right? I've got to be that person that is there first, and I'm providing that value, right? If again, back to bricks and mortar, you're a general manager sitting on your showroom floor, a customer walks in and nobody pays attention to that customer, how long is it going to be before you throw a chair through the window saying, what are we doing, right? But yet, Ronaldo and Chris, we see this every day when we look at data that a customer's sitting on a vehicle in stock, a lead, and we haven't talked to them for 20 or 30 days. And we're wondering why our leads are going down and why we're not getting many visits to the store, because shopper counts are dropping off.
Mm-hmm.
So how much more important is that customer that has sent us a lead and said, hey, here I am, I'm interested in this vehicle you got on your lot. So that's kind of what that's about, and just tracking shopper counts in and out of markets.
I think it's, and Ronaldo, you brought it up, the election portion of it. Okay. And when we look back, heck, I'll take it back to 2004 because we had an election, in 2016, we had one in 2012, we had one in 2008, and you sit here and look at this and we get into that time. Yeah, we took some sharper dips in there because of what's going on. But then post-election, it seems like each and every year, let me take it over to 2016 here. It seems like post-election, it's almost even a bigger jump sometimes than non-post-election times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when we think about, Ronaldo, the topic, and again, I keep deferring back to you because you do a lot of the training for our dealer partners. When I think about that post-election time, and I think about the topic of today's discussion, the blind leading the blind, which creates a blind dealership, what's the answer? We've got the old school tickler files, we got the daily game planner, we got our CRMs. Yes, some of the people in our automotive community have Lotpop, okay, which is bringing together everything for them. But what is the answer to stop the blind leading the blind, creating a blind dealership? And the blind leading the blind is the blind CRM to the blind inventory management tool. And the reason why I call those blind is because in more times than not, your inventory management tool doesn't know what your CRM's doing. Your CRM doesn't know what the inventory management tool is doing. What's the answer? I mean, how do we fix this?
Yeah, well, the answer is always to kind of drill down in your processes and take a look at how you have things set up inside of the CRM. Of course, the best alternative is to join us at Lotpop and the utilization of Lot Walk, which is going to help you vertically integrate your lead process management with your inventory management. But if you don't have the ability to join in that movement, you have to, dissect your processes, pick up those rocks to see if there are any, squiggly, ugly things resting underneath, and dive into the process, find out exactly what you're having success with, and then you can kind of laser focus on that to see if you can expand that growth in that area. But you also want to identify the things that aren't working and eliminate it, cut it out of the process. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time, effort, and energy and not getting the correct return on the investment of that time, effort, and energy that's going to help you move forward with converting more of those leads. Cleaning up the CRM. If you've got 75-day-old leads and they've completely ghosted the salespeople, sales managers, BDC agents, why do you continue to have them in the CRM? The whole thing with any piece of software is garbage in and garbage out. But if you take a look at your processes and find that you do need to clean up and scrub your CRM, get that taken care of. Because at the end of the day, if we're not prepared for the influx of leads that history tells us that we see following an election, and we've already started to see that those are picking up, then once again, you'll be unprepared for the opportunity that's right in front of you.
Yeah, that leads into a really great piece here. And John, you in some conversation that the three of us were having, I think we probably had this conversation 6 times in the last week, but you brought a lot of really good insights to this. And a lot of it is due to, you've been around through those evolutions. Okay. One of our listeners, they brought a really good question after last week's episode. And the question was this: what do you guys suggest as a best practice? And this goes back to what you were just talking about, Ronaldo, of getting bulletproof as we see, this activity coming up in this small window of time we're going to have before we get the little wintertime lull. Okay. But what do you guys suggest as a best practice on the first response to a fresh lead? John, take that for us and help walk us down that.
Well, I mean, the first question I would ask them is, what do you do when a customer walks on your lot? How do you respond to that customer?
Ooh.
What are some of the things that you do, right? That would be the first question. Thank you to that listener for throwing that question out there, because I think it is important. But I think that a lot of times the difference in what you guys were just talking about is, I think a lot of times as dealers, we fail to recognize that we're operating 2 lots. We're operating our bricks and mortar, and we're operating our virtual. And our virtual is where most of our customers visit us first. So what would you do? What would you do if a customer walked on your virtual, or your physical lot? How would you handle them, right? How long would you let them sit out there without greeting them and giving them the attention that they deserve and they want, quite frankly? And so how long would you do that on your virtual lot? And then once you walked up to them, what would you do with them? How would you approach them from that perspective? And so, I think, Chris, to your point, to me, it's all about building value, right? Look, and I'll say this confidently right now. Yes, we had an election. Yes, I believe things are going to change. I still believe there's a little bit of a hesitation from the buying public right now, because they're waiting to see what happens with interest rates, right? We've got incentives on new cars. There's some lesser expensive new cars starting to hit lots, right? And so we've got some used car dealers that have some late model, more expensive inventory, right? And so customers are just, there's a lot of options out there for them, and they want direction, right? Listen, if we consider ourselves professionals, right, then customers are coming to us for professionalism. And so they want to know, hey, this vehicle that I sent you a request on, that I raised my hand and said I'm interested in, give me the reasons why this is the right vehicle for me, right? And so that should be the response, right? We should one, send a video out to them and do a walk around, because if a customer stand on your physical lot, what are you going to do with them? You're going to start giving them a walk around and get them inside that car, as you say, Chris, where customers spend 98% of their time, right? And so give them a video and then listen, if customers are online, again, I don't have any reason to refute this data. Customers are online 14 to 16 hours researching inventory. If I'm a salesperson that reaches out quickly and I start answering some of those questions that they would normally research themselves, how much value am I building for that customer if I can save them time because I'm doing that research for them, right? And guy wants to buy a truck. What do truck customers want to know about their truck, right? And I can send them that information right away. I'm saving them time, and thereby I'm building massive value. So that would be my recommendation is one, what would you do if they were on your lot, and do the similar thing and build value with that customer by answering their questions, anticipate their questions before they even ask it, and answer that information by what we're sending over to them, what we're calling them about, so that I can build massive value with them over the other competitors that we know are just doing the same old thing like they've always done.
That's a great point, John. I think that Chris is talking, but he's got his.
I was actually hit mute, but
I put him on mute because he keeps talking about how old I am, so I put him on mute.
John, listen, brother, don't be mad if we got to cut you in half to count the rings to figure out how old you really are. Okay, but you bring up a great point about bringing the value. What would we do if we were on the lot? I'm thinking about the story you told us, John, about a recent transaction that you did when you bought your Tahoe. We're busy all day long on the phones, and you were reaching out to different Chevrolet dealers, and you had very specific questions you were asking, and you had very specific things that you were looking for. But then you had one dealer, they were sitting there like saying, hey, what are you doing with this? What are you towing with it? No different than exactly what you're talking about when we meet a customer at the brick and mortar, how we sit there and really start doing a really good job of fact finding and questions and things of that nature. I personally think that salespeople and BDC agents and sales managers and GSMs and GMs and dealer principals get way ahead of themselves, put the cart way in front of the horse, and go right for the juggler. Yep, the vehicle's in stock. What time can you be here? Versus the experience you had when you bought your Tahoe. Give us a sneak peek to that, because you raved about it for like 2 months.
Well, it was honestly, I sent out requests to our dealer partners. We have dealer partners here in my area where I live at, and I sent out 5 requests. And of the 5 requests, one of them answered within, I think it was 8 minutes, and started asking me questions about what I was going to be using the Tahoe for. And then after that point, she started to send me all the information that answered the questions about what I was going to be using the Tahoe for. And it was just boom, that fast. And so I'm a research person. Obviously, we do a lot of it at our company. So I'm going to sit and research. And the amount of time she saved me by what she sent me, hands down, that's where I went and bought the Tahoe from. And it was a 45-minute drive for me. Not huge, but it was a 45-minute drive. There are dealers I reached out to that were a heck of a lot closer, but she answered fast, and she saved me a ton of time and built a ton of value with me, because it would be stuff that I'd be researching myself. She did for me and sent it to me. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
And I would say to the listeners out there that asked that question or the listener that asked that question, maybe some of our other listeners that are going, oh my gosh, yeah, that's a great question. How would you respond to a fresh lead? Well, I mean, I think we gave a lot of really good ideas there. Ronaldo, you do a lot of training beyond just the basics of our software, some of those soft skill training sets. How would you give some advice here to some of our listeners, to some of our viewers? One quick nugget. What would you do?
I would basically tell them to make sure, well, first of all, you got to have a process. This is the first sales process card I ever got when I joined the automotive industry from Gene Messer Ford. 10 steps. All right. But you got to have a uniform process in place so that when your green peas come in, they know, okay, I've got this lead. Let me qualify that prospect and what they're going to be using this vehicle for in order to make sure that they're on the right vehicle. Because if they're looking at a Tahoe and they're going to be towing something or using it in a variety of ways, I don't want them to be disappointed in the fact that they bought a Tahoe from me because they simply were interested in a Tahoe. And John brought up a couple of other key points. Building value in themselves as a salesperson by saving that prospect time and providing them with information they probably would have gotten to in hour 13 of their whole process. But by answering that question and providing them valuable research that's going to validate whatever a prospect or whatever a salesperson says to that prospect moving forward, it's priceless. And the name of the game has always been to demonstrate more value than the price of the vehicle that you're asking, or the price you're asking for that vehicle. And that young lady won John over, which is not easy, trust me.
No.
But yeah, by just being a value add to the entire process. So that my first suggestion: put a process in place. And second, make sure that it's centered around providing prospects with information that they need in order to make a well-informed decision.
No, that's good stuff, Ronaldo. Go ahead, John.
What's the one thing we all want more of that we can't have?
Time.
Exactly. Right. And that's a way for salespeople. That's a way for not to trick the system, right? Because there's only 24 hours in a day, right? But by me reaching out and providing that information, right, you're giving that customer, you're freeing up more time in that customer's day, which is absolutely huge these days. It's absolutely huge as busy as people are. So you talk about a huge value add. That's, in my mind, that's number one. You're going to free up more time for me with our schedules. You got me. You right there, brother.
Sold.
Right there.
I'm done. Easy.
Oh yeah.
100%.
Well, that's something that I was just going to say, it's something that we've lost track of when we got through that period of time where, we were just taking orders or shooting fish in a barrel. It's something as a basic fundamental that we have to reinstill with salespeople and BDC agents if we want to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, listeners, viewers, number one, first and foremost, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope we're bringing a lot of really good general conversation to help you guys in your journey and to take the suck out of the automotive industry. As always, we're going to tell you to work the facts, work the facts, work the facts. It's all about the WTF, work the facts. But we've brought a lot of really good stuff up today. I encourage, if you're watching right now, comment below any additional questions you have, any feedback you have, anything that you're doing that you're seeing is yielding you really good results. As they always say, what you give back, you'll get it back as well. Share that with the rest of the automotive community. Comment below, share some of the things that you're doing. Or if you got a question, comment below. That'll come directly to us. We'll be happy to answer those questions on our next episode. And if you're listening and not able to watch this, hit me up directly. It is C Keen, that's Keeen as in Nancy, E, at Lotpop.com. ckeen@lotpop.com. Submit your questions over to me. I'll be happy to get the rest of the guys together, get John after we wake him up from his nap. Every day at about 1 o'clock, if you try to call John, you won't get a hold of him. He's got a Snuggie, a warm glass of milk, takes a 15-minute power nap, then he's good to go the rest of the day. But once we get done reading back through some of these questions, I promise you guys we will answer every last one of them. Down in New Orleans, if you want to learn more about, taking the goggles off, taking the blinders off, and don't let the blind lead the blind anymore to give you a blind dealership, absolutely, positively. Thank you for reminding me, John. Down in New Orleans, booth 1219. Booth 1219. Come join us. We're going to have a hot seat. Hey, listen, if you're a salesperson, if you're a sales manager, and you want to put your general manager or dealer principal on the hot seat, give me a call, guys. I would love to take and put them on the hot seat. And we're going to give a lot of really good information away because we believe in giving back to our automotive community. Come see us at booth 1219, NADA, January 2025, New Orleans. We might be giving some money away too. So come see us.
There might just be a healthy gambling chip there for you, brother. So yeah, they got casinos down there in New Orleans. So yeah, absolutely.
That ought to be a good time.
Might be. Just might be. The curious need to come by and find out. Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Again, from John, Ronaldo, myself, everybody at the Lotpop family, we look forward to seeing you have on the next episode, dialing in and listening to it. In the meantime, if you need something, give us a call. Thanks, guys.